Hi, I'm Russell Sturgis. Welcome to the fourth instalment in our series on how EAP works, and as I explained last time, which is also about how awareness and mindfulness work. So far in the series we've looked specifically at awareness and the nature of awareness as it relates to expanded understanding and knowledge. We've looked at then the way in which through that expanded understanding and knowledge there is a need for developing strategies for being able to adopt or use that expanded knowledge and understanding. And so the second element in that process is what we call in EAP as being strategic. The third element in this is about mindfulness and what mindfulness actually looks like. But as I explained last time, there's sort of a step between being strategic and being mindful, and that step really embraces the whole idea that mindfulness as a concept is quite foreign to the Western mind. It's something that's been within Eastern philosophy for a very, very long time, but within the Western mind, mindfulness is quite a new idea. So there's a certain amount of faith or trust that's associated with this whole idea of practicing mindfulness because it is such a foreign idea or such a new concept. And so today's blog and the video that we're doing today is really about promoting this whole idea that in order to be able to live life mindfully, you have to understand the principle of how mindfulness brings about change. And given that for the majority of you, you will not have personally experienced the way in which mindfulness facilitates change, it's going to require you to trust or to have faith that's going to be possible. And the thing that you're having faith in is where you invest personal will or the energy. So traditionally speaking, in the Western model, what we have is what we call a fix-it model. So if something needs to change, you go out and fix it. You manipulate whatever's out there in order for things to be different, or if it's something that's happening within the body, we have a very strong fix-it model. So we take medication to change things, or if it's bad enough, we resort to surgery. So we have these very drastic ways of having things be different. In terms of psychological transformation, we resort to the use of personal will and the fact that we actually use discipline of mind and discipline of behaviour in order to bring about change. So if you're overweight, then it's about the discipline of exercising and using diet to bring about changes in weight, which are very effective. They're able to create the desired result. The problem being is that when willpower runs out, when you become exhausted or when you can't sustain the energy or the motivation to be able to keep applying will, of course what happens is that the wheels come off and all of a sudden the eating behaviours and the exercise routine changes, and all of a sudden you find yourself back to square one in terms of weight. So this isn't this is something that we're used to, and of course where we end up sort of turning to drastic measures then in order to change reality. So if we're talking about weight, then people end up with lap bands, or they go in and have fat sucked out of them, and all sorts of drastic measures in order to once again use force to change the reality. Mindfulness has a whole different approach, and it works on the whole idea that the world that we see and the world that we engage in is plastic to our thoughts. And I have adopted a word that is a new word that's sort of being used in some other frames of awareness, but I think it holds a place here, and it's this concept, or what I'd like to call bioplasticity. So bio representing the notion of life, and that life is plastic. And so it's this whole idea that life is plastic to our thoughts, to mindfulness, so that when we have this ability to be mindful, we have this ability to be able to bring about change just through mindfulness, which requires a trust in a different sort of will. And now, whether you want to call this divine will, universal will, whatever you want to refer to, but there's this whole idea that there's a force that exists that exists outside of us that has this capacity to bring about change. And so the concept of mindfulness, and I talk about this in the blog, is that we, in our experience, butt up against people and things that happen to us in life where we respond to them generally subconsciously. So in other words, most of the way in which we respond to what happens in life sits underneath consciousness, and it's in our habits and it's in our programming. And of course, I've said this on a couple of occasions and I've written it in the blog. Research which suggests that 95% of the time that's what we're doing, is that we're responding to what's going on subconsciously, and so it's habitual and it's programming. So mindfulness is that we bring our awareness to the programs and the habit, so that instead of it being a subconscious thing, we now become aware of it. But we do something additional to that, and that is that we bring the new awarenesses of how things could be done and the associated strategies, and we've talked about these in the previous blogs, to this current awareness of our programmed behaviours and habits. And so what we have in this place of mindfulness is this combination of new thinking and old patterns of behaviour and thinking. Now, mindfulness has an extension to it, and in this, in being mindful, is we then get to consider the impact. We now have a choice, and that's probably the key thing about mindfulness, is that in this minute we have a choice. Now, I'm going to go into mindfulness and a lot of the knock-ons of mindfulness in the next blog, but I do want, we need to talk about it here. And so what I'm saying is that we have this choice, and the choice is, in any moment, that we can do it differently, or we can do it in the way that we've always done it. And of course, our ability to make the choice hinges on our ability to be able to recognise what the impact has been and what the impact might be, and from the impact, how it's either going to be serving or not. Now, and I talk about this in the blog, that serving is serving to us personally, but also serving to other people and serving to the planet. So in mindfulness, we sort of take this whole of life perspective that doesn't discard what's been there and what's been put in there subconsciously, because, you know, don't forget that subconscious saves a lot of energy. When we can function subconsciously, we're able to achieve things, but sometimes those programs and those patterns aren't serving anymore, and we should have updated them a long time ago. And so we come to this place of having these strategies, and we're able to be mindful of them. And it's in that remembering of these strategies that we're able to help to facilitate change. So this is where EAP differs to many of the other intervention programs and change management programs, in that they'll actually have you go out and adopt the changes, and you'll have things that you've got to do by certain dates, and you've got to give a report on it and make sure that you're sticking to it and doing it. Whereas what we're asking you to do is to stay in awareness. Now, that asks you to have faith in the whole idea that there's a divine will, or that there's a will greater than us that has this ability to reformat reality in order for it to reflect the change in consciousness that we've adopted. And so, as I said, unless you've experienced it, it's a little bit hard to get it. But I can tell you, having worked with the Enhancers Awareness Program now for several years, and having other mentors working with clients and working with my own clients, I've had the opportunity to see many situations in where people's lives completely changed as a direct result of them having become more aware and more mindful. Now, I need to really reiterate that the Enhances Awareness program is just about those two things. Well, it's three things. It's being aware, being strategic, and being mindful. We actually don't ask people to go out and actually adopt the strategies. And so any of the changes that we've seen happen has been as a result of people practicing being mindful. And so the biggest thing is relationships is probably where we see it most, where people have been in relationships where they are struggling to stay in them, where there has been talk of separation, where there's a lot of unhappiness, and all of a sudden they've gone through the program and this other person or just miraculously turns up in their life completely different. And where there were difficulties and impasses in terms of things improving, all of a sudden things got different. And the only thing that changed was the awareness and the mindfulness that was being held within the person who'd been going through the EAP process. So over and over again, we saw this type of thing manifesting as it related to in people's relationships. We saw it happening in people's health, where just through becoming more mindful, people started to experience changes within their health. Fulfillment in career, as people became more mindful, they actually made choices, and it was like it was a natural flow on to be more honouring of what it was that they really wanted to do and not what they felt they were obliged or had to do. And so we saw people making career choices. All the way through this process of working with people, we've seen people shift their value system. And so where values were oriented towards wealth and power and popularity, or avoiding scarcity and abandonment and being a victim, all of a sudden we saw people moving into this place of stillness and clarity, freedom from limitations and their story that had been holding them back, and this increased wellness and well-being, all because they were able to become more mindful. And so what this week's blog is about is this whole notion that as you become more aware, as you become strategic and shift the focus to mindfulness, which is about trusting divine will as opposed to exerting personal will. And if there's any will that has to be exerted personally, it's in staying mindful. It's in not rushing out and trying to fix things and have them be different. I'd like to invite you to take a few moments to read the blog. I think you'll find it interesting. This whole concept of bioplasticity is quite exciting. It sort of comes on the back of what I've been talking about in terms of neuroplasticity. But this is sort of saying that whole of life is plastic to our thoughts, and that when we're able to shift our thinking, when we're able to move into this place of awareness and to sustain that through mindfulness, that all of a sudden we create a personal reality and things start to play out. Relationships are different, our work is different, our sense of our personal worth and how and who we turn up as being in the world becomes different. Please take an opportunity to read it, and next time look out for the next in our series, where I go into a lot more detail about mindfulness and how that begins to look in terms of creating benevolence and compassion and empathy and all those other things that are a natural extension of being mindful. If you get an opportunity, have a look at our website, eapmentor.com, to find out more about what we do, and our Facebook page, Enhances Awareness Program. Check that out and have a look at the things that we put up on a daily basis there that are about enhancing awareness and how to live more mindfully. Anyway, we'll catch up with you next time. Bye.